This video is about installing some full extension drawer slides that I got on Amazon. I had 10 sets and these are the last 3. So I've done quite a few installations and this is the last. In this cabinet I'm going to be removing the stile and putting the drawers in. This is what it looks like to start with, and here's kind of what I did. To a very quick overview of kind of what I did. This is not a woodworking video. I get the slides installed, and this is what it looks like when it's done. So if you're interested in something like this, you can keep watching. So what I wanted to do is utilize as much space as I could in this cabinet, and I thought removing this stile in the middle would be a good idea, as long as the drawers would work, and they do. So it turns out that this is a pretty good design. I think it utilizes the space pretty well. But I got to save the stile because I'm going to use it to build the door, and you'll see that later. I'm going to tie it to one of the doors. So the first step in the process is to remove the stile. So I wanted to have kind of a straight line, and I know I'm not that good of a saw user. So I thought to start with I would make a score. And I actually made 2 scores. I scored one line, and then I moved it down by approximately the kerf of the saw and did a second line. And this is me clamping the straight edge for the second line. And that worked, once I get this thing positioned and clamped down, it held pretty good and gave an overall kind of straight line, at least on the front, where it really counts. So this is scoring the second line, and I'm just going in as much as this knife will go to kind of just make a nice straight line on the front, so it's not some wacky curvy thing. So remove the straight edge, and it's time to saw. This is the coping saw that I used. It's not the greatest thing in the world, but I acquired it from my father-in-law, and I just kind of brute forced my way through there, trying to keep it as straight as possible. But when you're doing something like this and it's binding, it's kind of difficult to get it to go straight. But it was not too bad. I didn't cut all the way through because I wanted to repeat the process on the bottom, even though this the stile is got a tongue into the base horizontal face frame. I wanted to just cut through that, and then when I tried to cut through the final cut on the top, it was binding and not very good. So I had to come at it from the other side, which it's kind of hard to align, and so I didn't really want to do this, but I ended up doing it this way. And things loose on the top now, are almost loose on the top. And then I went down and finished out the bottom, and the thing flying off. And this is what it looks like. So that's removing the stile. I didn't beef up the cabinet. I figured that the countertop was good enough. Now I put some tape on the stile so that it would friction fit. I actually added some more tape after this shot to get it to friction fit tight. Some tape on the bottom, some tape on the top, got it to where I wanted it. And then I took a block and I ended up gluing it first. I screwed it later, and then I just waited for that to dry. So here are the hinges that I ended up buying. Got a package of 10, and I used these brackets. You can use a block, and here's the plywood I used. So it's not that expensive of a project. But, my woodworking is very simple. This is not really a woodworking project or a woodworking video. I don't consider myself an expert at all. But I did I used a panel cutter and cut the plywood, and then I used the miter saw to cut these. So all the wood's cut. I don't show any of that. I will show this glue up and nail up piece. So what I did is I wrapped the edges around and taped them, and it looked like a pretty reasonable fit. And then I just drizzled some glue along the whole length here, and then tipped it back up and put it into place. And and got a nail or two in the top and kind of slowly built up getting it nailed while the glue was still wet. I didn't clamp it or anything like that. I suppose I could have if I really wanted perfection, but this is good enough for me because I'm not all about how this looks. I'm all about the functionality of it, so I just, I put in a lot more nails than you saw there, and then I take the tape off, and it looks pretty good. It's fine. I just aligned the bottom of the verticals with the bottom of the plywood. So here are the finished drawers, boxes, if you will. They're not really drawers quite yet, but they're all cut and glued and nailed together. So here's the slide. This is the soft close mechanism, which I think is pretty cool. But you pull the one piece that attaches to the drawer out by clicking this little lever, which is in the instructions. You can see that easy enough. And once you get that out, then you can attach it to the drawer. Now, my design was to be as simple as possible. I just aligned it with the front and aligned it with the bottom. It's not exactly how they say to do in the directions, but it seems to have worked. Then I mark. You could drill these, but all I did was just punch, or just use a punch, and this wood is soft enough where I didn't need to pre-drill. And the cabinets, on the other hand, you do have to pre-drill because it's really hard wood. But then you put in these screws. They're supplied. Again, if you try to screw these in really to some hard wood without pre-drilling, you're going to be out of luck. These screws will break on you, twist right off. But anyway, I got 3 screws in there, and I repeated that for both sides of all 3 drawers. And so I'm ready now to put the rails inside the cabinet. By the way, the drawers weigh about 13 pounds a piece, which is pretty heavy. Okay, so anyway, here we are with friction fit with the tape, and I'm pulling it out, and it's only glued, so I don't want to break that off, and I'm not so sure how dry the glue is. But it stayed with that super glue that I used. And I want to get some screws in there. Notice there is a space in there. That's supposed to be that way. It makes it look like the other cabinets. Anyway, I drilled all the way into the hardwood with a small drill bit, and then I drilled after it with a little bit bigger drill bit so that the screw wouldn't hang up on the plywood block that I've got. Then I stuck a screw in there, and I went in from the side here like this, and then I repeated the process 90 degrees from that. Just go in here and go into the door itself. So one screw into the door, one screw into the stile, and then I repeated this process 2 more times on the bottom and in the middle. So it's on there good, and it works out good. So now what I'm doing is I'm measuring for how big of a shim I'll need. And it's a 1/16 of an inch. It was 1.67 millimeters, but that's about a 1/16 of an inch. So I found some wood, just a chunk of pine, and stuck it in there. And these are the brackets that I'm going to use. You could use a block against the side of the cabinet, or you could use these. And I think it's about Steven with respect to the amount of effort it is. The blocks, if it turns out the rails are not parallel, then you have to cut a new block, whereas with the bracket, you can just move the bracket. Anyway, here I'm measuring how big of a block I'll need just for spacing. I'm not going to install it, but I cut the block so that it's parallel with the side of the cabinet. Presuming the cabinet's square, which it was on the bottom and the middle. The top, not so much. So I marked these, drilled them, and put the screws in. And these are both installed right now. So I got the screws in the back there. You can barely see because it's not a good shot. But it's ready for the drawer installation. Now, when I stuck this drawer in there, I noticed that it was pretty tight width-wise. And in fact, it peeled up some of the wood off of the side of the drawer, but it worked. So it was really tight in the front, but I think it's kind of scraped away some wood. And you can see that here barely. but there's some shavings there. But something was scraping, but the drawer worked, so I'm good with it. Now I need to decide how far up to put the next set of slides, and I'm measuring on my model 6 3/4 inches, and when I measure the top one, it's 6 5/8. So I just cut one that's, I don't know, 6 5/8 or 6 1/4 or something. It doesn't really matter. It's just rough, as long as it's the same, consistent. So I cut those blocks and I taped them on the wall, and I used my other block to keep it offset from the side of the cabinet, and I marked it. And so I repeated this process on the other side and did, attach them. And the middle drawer went in just great. So that one went in good. You have to operate it a couple of times before it's found its juju. So you got to yank it out. But once you do it once, it just continues to operate in a perfect way. So the middle drawer is in. I did the top drawer, same way. This time though, I have a problem. It starts binding and doing weird stuff, and it won't come out, and it won't go in all the way, and so I'm not sure what's going on. This is my first installation you're seeing the video of, and so I'm peeking in there trying to figure out what's going on. Turns out I didn't take a picture, but this is what's happening. The cabinet is not square, so the slide is too far out, so they're not parallel. So what I need to do is get this thing out of there and reposition that. So I measured with just a measuring tape, but I ended up, making them parallel by using a measuring tape, and then I screwed them into the back, screwed that bracket into the right place in the back instead of the place where they were splayed out, wider in the back. So it's not wider in the back anymore, and the drawer goes in okay, and the seat's flush. So it went in, but it took a couple of tries on that top one. I wasn't surprised that a factory cabinet isn't square, but it wasn't. So anyway, here's the final product. That's my installation video. Not a woodworking video, just what I did video. So hopefully that's helped you out.